Thanks for staying with us. Now, Putin-backed United Russia Party looked all set to win the parliamentary elections by a landslide as counting of votes due to a close on Monday. A win in these elections will pave the way for Putin to return to power for a fourth term as president of Russia. The party and its allies are on track to winning 343 of the 450 seats in Russia's lower house of parliament. Vladimir Putin has been in power for 17 years now as either president or the prime minister. However, Russia's opposition party leader has said that these elections were not free and fair.
Понятно, что выборы, как мы изначально, когда мы входили в эти выборы, мы говорили, что они не свободные и несправедливые. Сейчас мы будем уже говорить о третьем факторе, достоверны ли сами данные по голосованию.
And the latest from Syria now, according to reports, an airstrike has hit an aid convoy near Aleppo in Syria just hours after the Syrian military called an end to the current ceasefire. Unconfirmed reports say 12 people were killed in the attack near the town of al-Kubra. A UN spokesman said at least 18 of the 31 trucks had been hit, but could not confirm whether it was by an airstrike. Each year, thousands of migrants and refugees die as they attempt to cross international borders to flee conflict and poverty. And this week saw the first ever summit on refugees and migrants open at the United Nations. This next report takes a look at the causes and consequences of the world's migrant crisis.
Each year, thousands of migrants and refugees die attempting to cross international borders illegally. In 2015, nearly 4,000 people died crossing the Mediterranean, the gateway to Europe for those fleeing conflict, persecution and poverty, mainly in Africa and the Middle East. The main migratory flow at present is the central Mediterranean route, with Libya and Egypt used as transit points for migrants from sub-Saharan countries, mainly Western Africa and the Horn of Africa. Libya is not only a transit point but a base for migrants, although the deteriorating security situation has prompted many to leave. The central Mediterranean route is the most dangerous of all, claiming hundreds of lives every year as people set off in overloaded fishing boats or rubber dinghies run by people smugglers. The current refugee and migrant crisis caused an unprecedented flow of more than 1 million people across the eastern Mediterranean route in 2015 and early 2016, the majority coming from Syria. They crossed from Turkey into the European Union via Greece or southern Bulgaria before moving north on the Western Balkan route via Macedonia and Serbia to reach Western member states. However, a controversial EU-Turkey deal struck in March 2016 has all but shut down these routes. Alternative routes leading through Serbia, Croatia and Slovenia, or Serbia and Romania, have also been blocked.
And in fact, the UN General Assembly has adopted a global declaration on migrants and refugees. Leaders from 193 countries adopted the historic document to save the lives of millions of refugees and migrants around the world. Under the declaration, the countries have agreed to spend the next 2 years negotiating global compacts on refugees and safe, orderly and regular migration. However, the declaration is being called insufficient by human rights and aid groups. It also does not address UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's call for resettlement of 10% of refugees each year. And at the UN, China has offered $100 million in humanitarian aid to address the refugee crisis. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang made the pledge at the first ever UN Migration Summit in New York. Keqiang added that his government is also considering setting aside part of the China UN Peace and Development Fund to help countries deal with the influx of refugees. Now, China is accusing Japan of trying to confuse the situation in the South China Sea. This coming after Japan said it would step up activity in the contested waters through joint training patrols with the United States. China has repeatedly denounced what it views as interference by the United States and its ally Japan in the South China Sea. It claims almost all of the South China Sea, with about $5 trillion in trade passing through the key shipping route every year. Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan and Vietnam too have claims in the sea, which is believed to be rich in energy resources and fish stocks. All right, moving over to the United States, where authorities have said that the alleged perpetrators of Saturday's Manhattan blast had traveled to Afghanistan and Pakistan several times and showed signs of having been radicalized. Earlier, New York law enforcement officials arrested 28-year-old Ahmad Rahami as a suspect in the blast case. According to senior officials, a resident of New Jersey, Rahami was identified after a fingerprint was found on one of the devices that failed to detonate. And the latest on the U.S. presidential campaign now. During a rally in Florida, Donald Trump has linked the recent attacks in America to immigration policy failures. Trump told supporters that the latest attacks were an inevitable result of lax anti-terror and immigration policies. These comments coming after an Afghan-born American man suspected of bombings in New York and New Jersey was taken into custody. Meanwhile, a stabbing attack in Minnesota was carried out by 22-year-old Somali American with possible links to the Islamic State.
There have been Islamic terrorist attacks in Minnesota and New York City and in New Jersey. These attacks and many others were made possible because of our extremely open immigration system, which fails to properly vet and screen the individuals or families coming into our country. My opponent has the most open borders policy of anyone ever to seek the presidency.
Now, as the U.S. elections are approaching, the Clinton versus Trump battle is heating up, with both nominees trading blows. In a latest report, Hillary Clinton has accused Donald Trump of helping Islamic State militants recruit more fighters. She called him a recruiting sergeant for terrorists after the bomb blasts in New York and New Jersey. The renewed focus on terrorism comes as Clinton and Trump prepare for the first debate on Monday at Hofstra University in Hempstead, New York.
We know that a lot of the rhetoric we've heard from Donald Trump has been seized on by terrorists, in particular ISIS, because they are looking to make this into a war against Islam. Rather than a war against jihadists, violent terrorists, people who number in the maybe tens of thousands, not the tens of millions, they want to use that to recruit more fighters to their cause by turning it into a religious conflict.
Now, with less than 2 months to go before the U.S. election, U.S. President Barack Obama will deliver his 8th and final address to the world leaders later today. He will focus on combating violent extremism worldwide and the U.S.-led coalition's war against the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. The same day, Obama is also set to host a conference that's aimed at generating more safe havens for the world's 21 million refugees, many of whom have fled the war in Syria. Now, Game of Thrones won a whopping 12 Emmy Awards this year, with 23 nominations on Sunday, and also won the top drama category for a second straight year at the 68th Emmy Awards in Los Angeles in California. The People, V.O.J. Simpson, FX's 10-hour dramatization of former football player's 1995 double murder trial and sensational acquittal, won 9 Emmys, including the Gongs for the Best Limited Series and Writing. Egyptian-American Rami Malek took home his first Emmy for Best Drama Actor for playing a socially inept computer hacker in Mr. Robot, while Canadian Tatiana Maslany was a surprise winner for playing a woman with multiple clone personalities in Orphan Black. Congratulations to all the winners there. We're taking a short break, but you can track all of our top stories on our social, digital and mobile media platforms. Thanks for tuning in.